Hello viewers, welcome to another edition of the Environmental Protection Agency's monthly feature, The Environment Matters, where we highlight the work of the agency in the context of national development, as well as sensitize you on your roles and responsibilities as partners in the developmental process. I'm your moderator, Candace Brower Thompson. Now this month's episode we have a very interesting topic for discussion. Actually, it's captioned "Turn the Volume Down." And if you're thinking about music, yes, you're almost right. Music is a part of our discussion, but we're speaking in the wider context of noise and noise pollution. And for the episode, I have my guests have quite a number of years of experience in addressing the issues related to noise pollution and more so noise management. So at this time, I want to welcome to the program again Mr. Sean Redmond, Senior Environmental Officer at the EPA with responsibility for air quality and noise management.
Thank you.
Senior Superintendent Errol Watts from the Guyana Police Force, and Ms. LaDonna Kissoon, Environmental Officer at the Environmental Protection Agency with responsibility for air quality and noise management. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so it seems like noise is becoming a very pervasive issue in our society. We're becoming excessively loud, but some people even argue that noise is subjective.
Yeah.
It depends on whether if you're listening to a Michael Jackson and your age, probably if you're over 40, and versus Cartel at the same volume. For some people, the Cartel might be noise, but the Michael Jackson might not be noise at the same at the same volume. So just to put our discussion into context, we have the police force and we have the Environmental Protection Agency, both organizations with some form of responsibility for noise management, controlling noise. How is noise defined in the context of your policies, your regulations, or your acts and so on?
Okay, Candace, thank you again for having me on the program. Noise is not a recent problem, right? If you go back, you know that noise has been a matter of concern since in the days when they had stone roads and cartwheels, right? And the turning of the wheels on the hardened surfaces was a noise nuisance then. So since then, there have been discussions on how do we reduce noise impacts. The Environmental Protection Noise Management Regulations defines noise as any unwanted sound, right, that can lead to psychological impact. Noise also includes vibration.
In the context of the Guyana Police Force, noise is defined as any sound which is loud, repetitive, and continuous to the annoyance of any person in the neighborhood from a law enforcement perspective. That is defined as noise. And I would urge persons in the community to be considerate in how they operate in dealing with the playing of music for public entertainment or in the private setting. They should think about their neighbors and ensure that they are very considerate and they are not disturbing the neighbors when they're performing whatever form of music or so they're doing.
Excellent. And I know that noise would come from various sources, as Tashana mentioned. So, we want people to clearly understand what kind of sources of noise these entities regulate. Because noise, barking dogs can create a lot of noise. Some children can be very noisy, right? So in terms of regulation, what are the major sources of noise that are regulated by the EPA and by the police force?
So at the Environmental Protection Agency, we are focused on noise emissions. We are focused on loudspeakers in particular. and any activity that can produce noise as defined by the regulations. Earlier I would have defined noise as any unwanted sound. So therefore the agency would regulate and authorize facilities that emit noise. So we start with loudspeakers, and loudspeakers tend to be at bars, clubs. Sometimes you have construction activities that are also sources of noise. You've got facilities, industry that also produces noise, and they too are authorized. I'll invite LaDonna to share her experiences with, authorizing facilities related to noise management.
All right. So before we get into that, I just wanted to make it clear: noise, although it's any unwanted, sound, persons shouldn't run away with the idea that, if your next door neighbor decides to play gospel in the confines of their home or whichever music, that it's noise. So there's a difference between the noise, and then we'll get into what noise pollution is generally. But with regards to regulations, like Ms. Redmond indicated, loudspeakers, that's one of the things that the agency of itself look with regards to our regulations in authorizations. Industrial activities, factories, especially manufacturing factories, that would have like bottle plants, industrial power plants that would have extremely large generators. That's one of the things. Well, those are one of the other facilities that the agency authorizes through its regulations. Clubs, bars, hotels, restaurants, especially those that actually has really large music speakers or players, more so.
In the context, we should not forget, in the context of Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, minibuses and any form of public transportation are covered under this discussion, and we are concerned in Guyana Police Force in relation to these minibuses and hire cars, that they will have large amplified music in these transportation services. And the passengers who are inside are affected in many cases by the high level of noise that they make in terms of, in the context of saying that it's music. Music to one set of persons are not music to the other set, in the sense of what is being played by the young people now in these minibuses. So we must take that into consideration and ensure that when we play music, we be moderate in all our operations.
Candace, I think this is the point where we need to talk about limits. So noise is unwanted sound.
So I guess in essence, when does it become noise pollution?
When we've got the limits.
Right.
So under the Environmental Protection Management regs, it requires the setting of permissible limits. And the agency a few years ago would have revised the guidelines for noise emissions into the environment with help from the Guyana National Bureau of Standards, led by the Guyana National Bureau of Standards and other stakeholders. The standards outlines noise emissions for various categories: for educational, for institutional, such as like courts, hospitals, for residential areas, commercial and industrial, as well as recreational. So persons are allowed to play their music. We're not saying that you cannot. It is within the limit. And if you are in a residential area, according to the guidelines, your noise emissions should not exceed 75 decibels at your boundary.
So how would you know whether it's exceeding the decibel level?
So how do we know? They are noise meters.
Okay.
Noise meters are equipment that measure noise. Noise is measured in decibels, and the noise meters are able to detect how many decibels are being emitted. The standard speaks to noise at the boundary or 50 feet away from the source of the emission.
Noise. So that's how you measure.
That's how we measure. And if you're home and you want to know whether or not your activities are emitting noise above the permissible limit, these days everyone has a smartphone. And smartphones actually come equipped with an app, the noise meter app, that you can utilize just for self-monitoring.
So there are the limits, and rather than being, subjective about whether it's noise or you just measure it, and you said 50 feet from the source?
Yes, from the source or at your boundary, whichever is closer.
All right. So, we're talking about noise and all, but why is noise like a problem? Why is it? Senior superintendent was made reference to certain implications of noise, hearing loss and stuff like that persons could have that we often take for granted. I'm sure most of us are probably have some hearing impairment because of the level of the amount of noise we were exposed to over an extended time. But could you just briefly state what are some of the impacts of prolonged exposure to noise or of noise pollution?
Well, so one of the things we should note is that sound level exposure for adults and children, even plants and animals, vary. So for children, toddlers, infants, they should not be exposed to more than 20 decibels of any sound level, whereas an adult should not be exposed to anything above 85 decibels. Exposure can not only damage your hearing, but with damaged hearings, it throws your entire bodily function off. And like Tishana said, this can lead to psychological effects. A lot of times persons, complain about noise causing them lack of sleep. Now, with lack of sleep, we all know that could make you very irritable, right? So lack of sleep, you're irritated, you can't perform at work. Hearing can also lead to you becoming, suffering from cardiovascular, diseases. You could probably get a heart attack, or, it could limit your flow of blood to your heart. So all these things have to be taken into consideration, when you're being exposed or you're exposing yourself or persons around you to high levels of noise.
So it has even more implications than we think. The other day I was at a certain place, I won't say it's in a building, and a car was passing on the outside, and the music was so loud. It was, vibrating my entire body. I felt like the music was playing where I was. And I looked outside, to see, what's really happening. Like, why would you play your music that loud? Is it to entertain, to announce that you're passing, to draw attention to the car, to draw attention to the driver? Trying to fathom what are the reasons, why is it that people play music so loud? And I looked outside, and the entire back of the car, with no passenger, he can't take passengers because the entire back was filled with speakers, right? And people don't because if something happens on that car or somebody's trying to get his attention, he would not hear. If you're next to him, he can't hear you at the volume, that music was playing at. So it's something that we should really, take, be cognizant of. There are people who are sometimes studying, there are people who are sick, have certain conditions and so on, that it can actually aggravate as well. So we're going to get back to, I know most people probably want to hear this because, people travel in public transportation and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking a bit more with Senior Superintendent Watts when we return after the break as it relates to noise in public transportation. What are some of the challenges? What did you recommend, to persons utilizing those services or even providing the service and things like that. So thank you very much, and do stay tuned. We'll be back after the break.
Miss Sonia, gosh,
My
Miss.
name is Sonia.
Morning, Miss Cheryl. I'm late for work.
I noticed the other day y'all had a big campaign with them police officers, so shutting down them people barbecue, wedding, dance. Man, how y'all expect these people to make money and survive?
No, Miss Cheryl. That is far from the truth. The EPA and the Guyana Police Force are actually working together to ensure that persons who conduct certain businesses and activities are authorized. We've tried to allow them to adhere to the noise regulations.
Well, this gotta be a new law. What law is this?
These laws were always in place. It's now that we're getting all these complaints at the agency, we are trying to enforce them. The Environmental Protection Act has been in place since 1996, and it states that persons and businesses must apply for environmental authorization before operating a sound-making device.
Well, girl, I never know this thing is part of the law.
So if you're keeping a barbecue or an open-air function, like a wedding or a concert, especially in your community, right, and you're playing a music system, you have to apply for a short-term noise permit. And for persons that operate in a business and you got generators and stuff, you have to apply for a long-term permit. And that is applicable to bars and hotspots and clubs also.
Well, now that you explain it, I understand it. It's unfair to the elderly, sick people, and even them little children.
That is correct. According to the World Health Organization, loud noise can cause stress, sleep deprivation, and hearing impairment. And I'm sure you wouldn't want that.
Oh, now I understand. Thank you for explaining it, Miss Sonia.
For more information, you can contact the EPA at 225-5471 or visit our office at Ganges Street, North Sophia, Georgetown.
Come around, please.
Morning. My name is Deborah. I just want to get some information.
Good morning. I am Odessa Duncan, Senior Environmental Officer. How may I assist you today?
Tell me something. They got this man next door by me breaking on this big building, and it's bare asbestos in the roof. I could remember hearing on your TV program that asbestos is dangerous to human health and the environment.
This is correct. The Environmental Protection Act states that any person or facility that is storing, treating, transporting, and or disposing of hazardous waste material must be authorized by the EPA to do so.
Oh, but it's now I'm really hearing about this hazardous waste thing. Tell me something more.
Hazardous waste are waste material with properties that are dangerous or capable of having a harmful effect on human health and the environment, including things like paint, fertilizers, and pesticides, waste oil, and asbestos. These things have the potential to cause cancer, birth defects, kidney failure, and reproductive impairment, with children being at the highest risk. The environmental authorization in this case gives the legal right to transport, store, and dispose of this material in accordance with the EP Act Chapter 2005 Laws of Guyana. Now, this ensures you and your operation and your process is safe for the environment and human health.
So you mean to tell me that all them leftover Christmas paint that I got on in my kitchen sink, I need authorization from EPA to get rid of it?
No, Miss Deborah. These items, once used for household purposes, does not require environmental authorization from the EPA. However, you should still take necessary steps to ensure that these materials are stored and disposed of in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you so much for the information. I go in and tell he that he needs an environmental authorization. Thank you.
At the Environmental Protection Agency, We believe that the environment is everybody's business. We can start caring for our planet by becoming more environmentally friendly in our everyday actions. Here's what you can do. Dispose of waste in a garbage bin. Clean our drains, yards, and carpets regularly. Take a reusable shopping bag to the market. Support local butchers and farmers to reduce packaged waste. Plant a kitchen garden, trees and flowers. Compost your organic waste. Conserve water and electricity. Carry a reusable water bottle. These little acts are good for your health and that of the environment. Remember, healthy people work better and achieve more, and together, small actions make a big difference. For further information on how you can help, please contact the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Ganges Street, Sophia, or telephone us at 225-5467. You can also visit our website, epagana.org, or our Facebook and Instagram pages.
From the gift of Iwakrama to the groundbreaking low-carbon development strategy, Guyana, the land of many waters, land of the giants, has been a leader on environmental management and biodiversity conservation in the Caribbean and on the world stage. Guyana is now embarking on a bold new path that places environment at the center of its development. Our country's Green State Development Strategy is our country's long-term development plan that seeks to reorient and diversify Guyana's economy, reducing reliance on traditional sectors and opening up new sustainable income and investment opportunities. The GSDS will provide the foundation for an inclusive green economy, which will result in improved human well-being and social equity while reducing environmental risks. In 2016, a bold move was made to ban styrofoam food containers through legislation and enforcement. We joined the rest of the world in beating plastic pollution for World Environment Day and beyond.
Are you involved in a business or thinking about starting one? Do you know there may be environmental impacts from business activities? According to the Environmental Protection Act of 1996, businesses such as gas stations, rice mills, large-scale agriculture and poultry farms, large-scale mining and forestry operations, hotels and resorts must be authorized. Persons proposing any of these activities need to submit an application for environmental authorization to the EPA.
Welcome back. As promised before the break, we're going to be speaking with Senior Superintendent of the Guyana Police Force, Mr. Errol Watts, and we're going to be zooming in a bit on the issue of noise and public transportation. What are some of the challenges the police have encountered, and what are some recommendations you would give to the passengers as well as the operators?
Well, first of all, I would like to encourage basically the drivers and the operators of public transportation, both the conductors also, to be more responsible in their approach when operating these public transportation. Because if there's music being played in the vehicle, they need to assess the reaction of the persons in the vehicle. And as long as they receive a complaint from any one of the passengers, they should take the complaint seriously, and immediately if the request is made to turn down the music or turn off the music, they should accede to those requests so that we have no complaint and problem after. Because if the complaint is made to turn down or request is made to turn down the music and they have not acceded to that, and a complaint is made to the police, we will investigate and we will encourage the passengers to provide us with the requisite statement so that we can take action against the conductor and the driver in this regard.
But in cases where I know some persons complain that they have requested for the music to be turned down, one or two passengers, but the others in the bus are not in agreement with that, and people are sometimes verbally abused, to catch a taxi or to buy their own vehicles, if they, request that the music be turned down. What would you say?
In cases like those, the request to turn on the music should be given precedence over the behavior of the other passengers.
Okay.
For example, if you have a permit for the magistrate to play music for public entertainment, and one neighbor complains about the high level of noise, even though you have the permit, the police have a duty to ensure they react to the complaint.
Okay.
And they will visit the scene, and they will probably warn you. And if the complaint continues, they will have to ask you to turn off the music completely. So in the context of that, I would say as long as there is a complaint by a passenger, that complaint should be taken seriously, notwithstanding the request of the other passengers in the vehicle.
Can
You
I
wanted
say?
to add? Yes.
Yes. We have the case also of the mobile operators, the
Push
vehicles,
carts or-
the vehicles that use the minibuses and cars to make public announcements. Those are sometimes a source of nuisance as well. The regulations.
Sorry, you're talking about the persons, whether they're selling stuff.
Yes, selling stuff or
Okay.
announcing deaths,
Right.
activities like that, events that are upcoming.
Yes.
Those are also a source of concern and nuisance to some persons in the community, and the regs also speak to such emissions also not being clearly audible more than 50 feet away.
Okay.
Right? Yes. So it means therefore that even those loud announcements also need to be monitoring their noise emissions. And the investment is either you can invest in your personal noise meter, which I think the last time we checked can be purchased locally from Radio Shack.
Okay.
Yes. Or you can use the app on your phone, but self-monitoring is very important to avoid becoming a nuisance to those around. Some persons appreciate it and some persons are really affected. Like LaDonna would have pointed out, different groups can tolerate different amount of noise. And our communities are made up of diverse groups of people. So you have children, you have the elderly, you have someone who may have just come out of a very intense surgery and is now recuperating. So consideration has to be given to the entire community when these activities are occurring.
Fair enough, because you don't know what is happening with the persons around you, right? And how that can actually affect them.
And sometimes many of the complaints we receive, it's because of those sensitivities.
Right.
The music is right next to, or the generator, because generators are also a source of significant noise emissions, if not sound attenuated properly. So persons would call and they have a baby, an infant who is unable to sleep. So yeah.
Just to point out, or to add to what both Mr. Watts and Ms. Redmond would have indicated. So one of the things we noticed of recent is that, we've been putting a lot of the information out there regarding noise management, monitoring, regulation, and persons are still, not coming forward for authorization. So, for example, if you're having a fair, be it a school fair or a community fair, and you're going to have an entertainment system, then based on our regulation, that would require an authorization. So, outside of the push carts and stuff like that, community fairs, parties, barbecues, things like that, the agency has the authority to regularize. So all those persons, who sits on PTAs or, are a part of a school board, just remember, if you're going to have a school fair, then you would need to apply for environmental authorization.
And can they see, I'm guessing persons may wonder why they need to have
right? I was just about to ask, why would they need, what would the authorization give them? Permission to make noise?
Actually, it does.
Okay.
It gives them permission to make noise, but within a controlled environment.
Okay.
So in environmental permit would outline your hours of operation. It would indicate measures that you can take to reduce your noise emissions on the receptors or the sensitive environment around you. So it would highlight if you're operating within a residential area. We get a number of applications for weddings. You operate, your noise emissions should not exceed 75 decibels. You should place your speakers at away from persons who might be affected. You have different times for evening as compared to daytime. After 6 o'clock in the afternoon, your noise emissions should reduce to 60 decibels. Right? So the noise permit that we grant allows for you to emit noise, taking into consideration its possible impacts on the receiving environment. So that is why the noise permit is important.
Okay, and that makes sense. Yes.
In the context of police division, we have 7 police divisions. And if you want to make public announcement, you want to do a promotion, or you want to announce the death of someone in various communities, you are required under the law, the Public Order Act, Chapter 1603, to make an application to the commander of that division, who would entertain your application and give specific hours during which you have to make those announcements. You cannot, as members of the public, just go on your own and make announcement like that in towns and villages without the authority of the divisional commander. So I would like to make this point very clear.
Yes.
You either make the application to the divisional commander or to the Environmental Protection Agency. But if you take it on your own and we found that you're being of nuisance to anyone, we will take action against you and prosecute you.
And what do they need? What are the form
they
of
need to get the
documentation?
application. If they're making an announcement in relation to the death of someone, they must have evidence that somebody
of course.
died. If they're making promotion in terms of some function, they must have some supportive evidence to show that this is just not a willy-nilly something.
Okay.
It's something real, it's something that is planned, and this notice should be given at least 14 days before.
Before the event.
Before the event comes up.
So for the case of the noise management regs, 10 days. You need 10 days notice, and the noise permit, especially for short-term events, you get it in about an hour or less. It's not a lengthy process once you come in with the documentation. And in our case, the documentation requires an application, a completed application form, an affidavit, a sworn affidavit indicating your event, where it's going to be held, approval from the NDC or the town council in the area in which you'll be operating, as well as permission from the Guyana Fire Service, because events also pose a risk sometimes in that case. So once you, as well as your ID card, once you submit those documentation,
you can just wait on the noise.
You can wait in the noise permit. It's not a lengthy process, and you get it and your activity can go on. So time is not a barrier with this particular permit. It gets done quite quickly.
Sure. And for the police force as well as the EPA, is there a fee attached?
Yes.
Processing fee or?
Our processing fee is stated in US dollars, $20 US, but it equates to roughly just over 4,000 Guyana dollars.
And our processing fee just $500.
Yeah.
But that 20 US is just for a short-term noise permit.
Yes.
Okay, so if you're going to have a barbecue or a wedding.
Yes, that would be considered a short-term noise permit. Whereas there is also an application for operation. So for persons that, have a restaurant or a club and they're looking to be authorized, then that's a completely different process. That's a completely different application and submission of documents. So in this case, they'll have to actually fill out an entire operational application. And then they'll have to submit the required documents, such as their ID card, form of transport once they're the owner for the property, or if they're renting or leasing the property, they'll have to submit evidence of that. They'll obviously have to have a copy of their identification card. They'll have to submit what is known as a project summary. So in, getting the application, that is also available, so they know what are the details required for the project summary. And in this case, they'll have to pay a processing fee for the application. And then based on the size of their operation, then they're required to pay an additional fee for their permit. And in this case, they can either have the permit for 1 year, or they can have it for 5 years, the maximum.
But that is for more established.
That is for and for established facilities, the ones who are looking to operate after, I think it's 11 or midnight, according to our regulations, soundproofing should be your priority. The noise management regulations speak to facilities that are operating after that time, soundproofing their facilities, so that obviously they can reduce their impact from noise emissions on the surrounding environment. So if you're thinking about opening a bar, or you have a bar, you should be looking at soundproofing your facility.
Yeah, don't want to disturb a good night's
rest,
right?
Yes. And just to add to what LaDonna was saying, the cost for an application for such a facility would be $10,000 or 50 US, and the equivalent of that, so roughly just over $10,000, and the fees would range just around $100 US, moving upwards.
Okay, for the more permanent facility.
Yes, and that's for an entire year or maximum 5 years.
5 years. Excellent. All right, so just to clarify though, in the event that there's a noise-related complaint, who should a person contact? The EPA, the police, or both?
Generally, they do just that. They contact the police, they contact the EPA. The police runs 24/7. The agency's offices are open Monday to Friday. So if you have a complaint on the weekend, if you're looking for immediate response, the police is obviously your go-to. And they're in the neighborhoods. They're closer to the communities. The agency also responds to noise complaints. We have received a number to date, or count for complaints is 227 complaints we've received thus far. In excess, complaints. Many of them noise related. Even when it's related to dust, there's often a component of noise associated with the dust. So we have those complaints that we receive, and we respond. When we respond to the complaints, we are aiming to identify the source of the emission, the amount of noise, if it's above the permissible limit, and in that case we use our noise meters. We take our readings, as I indicated earlier, either at the boundary or 50 feet away, whichever one is closer, and we determine whether or not the noise emissions are above the permissible limit. Once your emissions are above the permissible limit, it means that you have got to find ways to ensure you comply, that you become within that limit. So you either turn down the volume, you enclose your facility. It's up to the operator to explore ways in which your noise emissions can be reduced to be within the limit.
Mr. Watts, what about the police? Do you receive a lot of noise-related complaints? And if so, how is it addressed? Do they need to, if they don't show evidence, like they don't have some form of approval, either from the police or the EPA for the particular activities that they're executing, how does the police handle a complaint?
Well, all complaints that we receive at the police stations, we are bound by law to respond to them in the first case. And based on the situation on the ground, the policeman has to use his initiative and ensure that proper assessment is made of each case, and decisions have to be taken immediately to ensure that the nuisance does not continue, right? And investigation will be carried out immediately on the scene to see what type of permit the person who is making the noise has in their possession.
Okay.
And that will be assessed and action will be taken based on that.
Based on, okay. Excellent. So I want to turn our attention to the collaboration. We know that noise is a pervasive issue and it cannot be addressed by one entity only or one organization. So I'm aware that there is a noise task force which was established. Could you speak to that? When was it established? I know it's probably to address noise, but what in terms of the why, it's to address noise, but in particular, like what are the objectives of the task force? You know, who comprise it, and what are you seeking to achieve? What are some of your probably long-term, short-term goals?
So the Noise Task Force was established a few years ago. I think it was in either late 2016 or early 2017. And it is chaired by the Minister of Public Security, the Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan. The aim of the Noise Task Force, as you indicated, it recognizes that noise has several key stakeholders, and the task force brings together those key stakeholders. The Environmental Protection Agency, the Guyana Police Force, the Guyana Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Communities, the Ministry of Natural Resources, the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. Why we have entities such as the Ministry of Communities and the Ministry of Public Infrastructure? Because these ministries are involved in developmental activities at the level of housing development as well as commercial and industrial developments. So one of the reasons noise becomes a problem is when there is land use conflicts. So you have a residential area, and smack in the middle of the residential area, a commercial activity goes up or an industrial activity goes up. So by partnering, we are able to highlight some of these conflicts and try to avoid them.
At these meetings, we would submit a list of all the complaints that we receive nationally.
Okay.
And an evaluation will be done in terms of the action taken by the police to bring relief to the victims in these cases. And how are we able to deal with the perpetrators? And if there are other recommendations, for example, if we recognize that there is need for more stringent legislation from the police perspective, we will make these recommendations to the chairman of the task force for discussions, and then a way will be chartered to deal with the future actions.
Okay.
So our role on the task force is very important because we also would like to encourage the task force, other agencies to work collaboratively with us so we can visit some of these locations where these noise reports are and make our on this spot assessment, and we take actions. For example, we have visited Kitty area and other areas in Georgetown, and we have done our assessment, and we have charted a way forward to address some of these concerns permanently, and that will be done in the near future.
And what about is that on the silent zone or quiet zone? I think it's there. Years ago, there are areas that were earmarked as these sensitive areas. Is it silent zone or quiet zone or
silent zone?
Right,
for
so
example, we have the magistrate court, the high court, the hospitals, schools, and other places that under the laws are defined as silent zone. Some of these areas have signs depicting the areas that there should be no noise pollution and so on. So we as a law enforcement body, we try as far as possible to enforce that.
But that's also on the agenda of the task force, too, to probably more to raise awareness with regards to these silent zones, especially schools and so on. I know many persons are probably aware of the court area and I guess the hospital. But
too, yes.
Vehicles passing schools and learning institutions, you know, have no regard for what that institution offers, and they don't even attempt to turn the volume of their music down. So probably I would assume that they're not aware, but I mean, whether or not you're aware, you know, you should be cognizant that this is a learning institution, it's an educational institution, and they probably think they're going to pass by quickly, and it would not impact the persons in there.
Can they see that's an interesting point, because according to the World Health Organization, the classroom should be about 30 to 35 decibels on average. So in a classroom, that in essence is how quiet it should be to allow for attention, focus, and I guess being able to pick up what is being delivered. So consider that in the residential area, the limit is 75. Within a classroom, it should be 30 to 35. You indicated that children are oftentimes the source of much noise,
yes,
right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, but their classrooms should be that. I'm guessing this is during the time of instruction, you know, just to facilitate the learning process. That the World Health Organization recommends that noise limits within classrooms be at that level, 30 to I think about 35 decibels. Yes.
And added to that, the task force is also more so equipped with doing sensitization. Quite often the community level, be it the community policing group, Mr. Watson, correct? Yes. They provide a lot of flyers to residents within the different communities, you know, sensitizing them on, you know, noise pollution sources and what they themselves can do to reduce that. So I'm guessing there are quite a few teachers that, you know, reside in those areas. So yeah, they do sensitization additional to, you know, monitoring and enforcing.
I know so last year we would have collaborated with the Ministry of Public Security and the Guyana Police Force to conduct training for several police officers, and later on in this year we will also be running off additional training for police officers. So we're definitely trying to boost capacity in terms of noise management.
All right, so I know someone probably watching maybe thinking it, and I've been asked this question before. So is the EPA and the police trying to stop the fun? You know, some business people say, oh, sir, we can't play the music, you know, music is the source of fun for most people and so on. So
I think the term is at all. You know, no, the agency is not in the business of squashing the fun. Right? I remember receiving a call after we had that training where somebody asked, you know, investments would have been made in procuring high-end music playing instruments, you know. Just like how people have passion for cars, people also have passion for music. So when you make that investment, the question to me was, where can I go to test, in essence, the efficiency and the quality of this investment?
Okay.
At this point in time, I don't think there is a designated area whereby those activities can occur. But coming back to the limits, it's not that you cannot do these activities. The agency encourages that you conduct your activities within the permissible limits. So for a recreational activity, which enjoys, along with industrial, the highest limits, you can go as loud as 100 dB, right? Between 6 and 18 hours, and after then it comes down lower, Right? So the agency is definitely not about stopping the fun, but we are definitely about ensuring that you're adhering to the permissible limits. You're doing what it takes to achieve the permissible limits.
To protect your health.
To protect your health and protect the health of those who. Yeah, I remember sometime years ago traveling in a bus. The bus was headed to Perica, and the man, as the bus was about to roll off, the guy says, "Driver, bust my ears," That was his request. That was his request. So there are persons who like the vibration and the reverberating of loud songs, but that would definitely be an example of loss of hearing. Right? And not everyone wants their ears burst. And some persons do enjoy, it.
So you have to be respectful for those who don't share similar requests. And they're always the earpiece, and so you can play it as loud as you want,
and burst your ears
and
only.
your ear only, rather than try to burst everybody.
People should be aware that the right to play music or listen to music is not the right to disturb others. Because it's not a case where I might want to enjoy what you're listening to. So by all means, you have the right for your own entertainment. But what you don't have the right to do is to disturb me while you're being entertained.
We must strike a balance.
Right.
We must strike a balance. If you play your music, play it for yourself. Don't disturb other people. As a law enforcement body, we're here to ensure law and order. And as long as we have these complaints, we'll have to take action. So we advise you in advance to be moderate, to be respectful, and when you get these permits should only be given to responsible people, not people who are irresponsible.
And to read the terms and conditions,
definitely
adhere to them, and not just get the permit because you need the permission, but you're not aware of what is there.
That's very important, and it's one of the conditions within our permit, ensuring that any third parties involved are aware of the permit conditions. So sometimes you, as the owner, you get the permit, you may be aware of the conditions, but your DJ is not aware of the conditions. So your DJ is running on max when there are stipulations. So it's very important that everyone communicates. Once you get an environmental permit, you share the terms and conditions of the permit with all the key parties. That's the only way compliance will be achieved. You cannot keep the information to yourself. You have to share it with all those who are involved in the process, so that the work can be advanced and compliance can be achieved.
And it's not just locally or in Guyana that people have to adhere to, to standards as it relates to.
I remember my experience when I was studying in Canada. Actually, one of the first parties that the class had, after the event, the person was coming around collecting any donation possible. As it turned out, they got a violation. They got, I think, a ticket for being above their permissible limit, and they were seeking funds. At that stage, I wasn't aware that it carried such serious penalties. So it's not only in Guyana that limits are important and meeting those limits are required. It exists elsewhere, and sometimes far in more stringent terms.
And speaking about implications and penalties, what are some of the penalties for breaching, whether it's the noise regs or under the police, or the Police Act or the Motor Vehicle Act, whichever one applies? What are some of the penalties?
Under the Summary Jurisdiction Procedure Act, the penalty is fine as much as the least is at $10,000, and the most can be like $35,000 and imprisonment. But in many cases, one of the challenges that we have, most of the courts, they're not imposing the imprisonment aspect of it. And I think as be a part of the statutes, be a part of the statutes. If the statutes specifically state that we should have fine and imprisonment, I think to have it as a deterrent, both of the things need to be implemented.
Yeah. So in our case, the noise management regs speak to fines and penalties, starting minimum $350,000 to a maximum of $750,000, and like Superintendent Watt, it also speaks to some jail time as well. So yeah.
So all reason to be mindful. You don't want to spend your entire investment, paying a fine or being incarcerated for breaching the law. All right. So as we wrap up our discussion, what final advice would you give to the listening public with regards to noise management? What recommendation, what advice would you give to them?
All right. So for persons, even a housewife, there's simple things that you can do to yourself, might not be disturbing somebody else, but we have to take into consideration, especially how some houses are built. They're very close to each other. So as simple as, probably waking up at 5:30 in the morning and deciding you want a smoothie, so you have to turn on your blender. So the person next door who's sleeping at that time is being disturbed. So, those are the things we have to take into consideration. Like I said earlier, your right to make noise or listen to music is not your right to disturb others. So we got to be considerate about, times that we make noise or play music, or we do any form of daily activity. More so where we put stuff to. Some persons I know would take their music systems on the veranda or on their steps, and they play music. We get a lot of complaints sometimes regarding activities of that nature. Be considerate. More so, just be considerate about where you place your stuff, how you operate it, who exactly is living around you. It may be a lot to take into consideration when you want to be entertained and enjoy life, but maybe there's somebody else out there where you might go to who will do 10 times worse than what you did to somebody else. So the smaller things too. Be mindful of it.
Even honking your horn,
yes,
could irritate people. Some people just honk their horns all the time in traffic. You're in a line, there's a cessation of traffic, you can't go anywhere. Why are you blowing? You just have to wait, because that in itself could irritate people waiting, and and as you said, there's a ripple effect. And then you meet to work and you're just agitated over the the entire situation, and it impacts on your performance and how you relate to other people, and a whole lot of other social issues and so on can escalate as a result.
Funny thing is, I actually had a friend that got into an accident like that. She's waiting in traffic and somebody decides to blow. She jumps and accelerates and hits the back of another car. Wow. So it's like I said, be mindful of the things that you do.
In terms of public transportation, I would like to urge the operators of public transportation to do not put large speaker boxes and amplifiers in the public transport systems, because that will affect passengers, will affect members of the public a lot. In terms of the persons wanting to hold public entertainment functions, they must first engage the police, seek out us for advice, so we can guide them along the way, right? So that we have less complaints coming from members of the public. In terms of victims, I'll encourage them to report these matters as much as possible to the nearest police station and be prepared to give statements so that we can prosecute the perpetrators. Because we are now in the business of punishing persons. The agency tasked with that is the magistrate and judicial system. So we will want them to have reports made, be willing to give statement to prosecute perpetrators, at the same time, right, come forward and be willing to give the evidence so that the magistrates can do what they have to do.
Know your limits, know the limits, and adhere to them. Explore ways to achieve compliance. Do not let your entertainment becomes someone else's nuisance. Enjoy, but consider others.
Consider others, excellent point. So I want to say thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. I'm sure the viewers would have learned quite a bit, and they're more informed to make better decisions and better choices. And to the viewers, I want to thank you for watching. And remember, at the Environmental Protection Agency, we want to hear from you. So you can contact us on our Facebook page, our YouTube, Instagram. You can send us an email, epaguyana.org. You can check out our website. So there are various ways in which you can contact us. And we would want to hear from you. What do you think about the program? If there's anything else that you need to know, feel free to contact us. We also have a lot of resources available related to noise management, noise pollution, among other resources, so you can access those online via our website as well as from the agency. And we thank you very much for joining us. Remember, this program will be broadcasted 4 times, and you can review the broadcasting times at the bottom of your screen. So once again, thanks to my guests, Ms. LaDonna Kissoon, Senior Superintendent Errol Watts, and Ms. Tashana Redmond George for a very interesting discussion. And I just want to encourage you, to be mindful of those around you, to be mindful of your actions, and ensure that it's not your enjoyment, as Tashana mentioned, is not a nuisance to anyone else. And sometimes all it takes is for you to just turn the volume down a little bit. So until next time, thank you very much for joining us. And I've been your moderator, Candace Brower Thompson.